we need to pay attention to the energy that we use, because we depend on energy for our comfort and well-being, and we behave as if we're entitled to use as much of it as we like, and essentially we're not.
You're listening to a Wood End Barn podcast with me, Sam Tom, and I'm speaking today with renewable energy expert Dr Alan Owen from Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. Alan, thanks for giving up your time.
You're welcome.
You're giving a presentation to the Cafe Scientifique in Buchanans Bistro at the Barn in Banchory on Tuesday the 15th of February. Now, the title of that is the Personal Energy Allowance.
Okay, what I'm trying to suggest here is that individuals should have a personal energy allowance in much the same way as you have, say, a personal tax allowance. You are allowed to consume so many, the units could be a variety of things, could be kilowatt hours, it could be done in joules, it could be measured as a carbon footprint. Any one of those would be reasonable for starters, and the thing can be refined as we go along. Into that calculation, it's possible to put, in a fairly straightforward manner, the energy required for an individual for a reasonable amount of energy consumption, depending on, say, postcode area. In that way, you can differentiate between people in Bournemouth and people in Shetland.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a government-run scheme, because it would probably just become too complex and too expensive if it was.
And is this the kind of thing that you would associate a penalty with? For example, if you exceed, as you do with your credit card, if you go over, okay, you have a bit of leeway because you might get an overdraft, but then there's penalties attached with that.
Well, I think the penalty would be that once you had exceeded the amount available to you, you would have to buy extra amounts. One of the strange things we have at the moment is most energy tariffs from the utilities charge quite a high fee up to a certain level of consumption, after which it gets cheaper.
Yeah.
So my argument is that actually that's upside down.
Tell me they're doing this in Finland or Norway or Scandinavia somewhere. Is anyone doing this?
I'm not aware of it being done anywhere else in the world. I'm sure there's somebody out there who could pop up and say, yes, it's being done in such and such.
Yes, yes.
But my argument would be that we don't always have to wait for somebody else to do it, to take it on ourselves.
And Alan, you're an engineer, and I was looking at your web profile, and yet it seems to be that this is kind of psychology, isn't it? Because it's persuading people.
It is, but as an engineer, and I think I was first called a tree hugger in 1983. So I've been doing this for a while. Now, we start to run out of power generation equipment. I think in 2014, the first big power station gets switched off. So we lose 30% of our power generation in the UK, starting in 3 years' time, and that will take about 3 years to enact.
Do you have a positive message for the audience when they come along? I mean, can you sell them?
My positive message is that there isn't any major problem over our energy consumption, but we do have to change how we regard it and how we consume it and what we do. The status quo is not sustainable, full stop. We can't continue as we are. There is no reason for this to be difficult. There is no reason for it to be hair shirt and grow your own soap and all that sort of thing. But we do have to accept that things need to change. And if they don't change, then it will become far more difficult than we can possibly realize at the moment.
Dr. Alan Owen from Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, thank you very much for joining me. You've been listening to a Wood End Barn podcast with me, Sam Tom. Now, Alan is giving his talk to the Cafe Scientifique at Buchanans Bistro at Wood End Barn on Tuesday the 15th of February. That's at 7:30 p.m. Advance booking is absolutely essential. This kind of talk will be popular. Call the box office on 01330 825 431. Alan Owen, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.